Hi there. Welcome to Reflections, a television program sponsored by the Paducah Cooperative Ministry, where we seek to do God's hands work with human hands. And my name is Heidi Suhrheinrich. I'm one of your hosts this morning. With me is Scott Dossett. Hiya, Scott.
Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good. We've got an interesting show today, don't we?
We do indeed. Have Executive Director of Market House Theater, Michael Cochran, with us this morning. Going to talk a little bit about Market House Theater and some of the different aspects of what he does and why he does it. So,
one of the things about Reflections is we look at how faith is expressed through all different ministries and folks in our community, and Market House is no exception. Michael, you have just wrapped up Godspell very successfully, and one of the things we want to talk to you today is how do you select some of the things that you produce down at Market House, and if we may, get into your personal faith a little bit.
Sure.
And how that comes into play with what you do every day. But let's start at the very beginning.
How do we pick a
Market
show?
House Theater is
Market
an
House Theater.
institution in Paducah, right? It's a beloved institution.
This year will be 50 years. October
50 years.
14th is the 50th anniversary.
Wow.
And the group started out really because the Paducah Civic Beautification Board, they were going to tear down that Market House building. Like all buildings in the 60s, if it was old, get rid of it, or change it, or make it modern.
Right.
So they brought in the Civic Beautification Board, got together, and we actually have the bumper stickers still that say "Save the Market House." They did a campaign to save that, to turn it into a cultural center for the city. And they contacted a group of people and said, would you create a theater? A little theater that was called at that time. And so Ben Bradford and JC and Wilhelmina Dudley, Catchy Hassman, there was a group of people that got together, had that first meeting on October 14th and decided to create a theater in Paducah to put on plays at the Market House. And the building was still being used as a part of a market during that time, so their first play was actually put on at the IBEW Union Hall, which was the male animal. And then the second play, The 7-Year Itch, was put on at the Market House building itself. And it's been an interesting, I've been there, it'll be 30 years now, November 1st.
That's incredible.
And seeing the growth of the theater from a small little community theater to really a theater that has a national recognition. It's won a lot of national awards. It's done a lot of things in the community, especially in education with kids, that really is part of what that mission is that we do. And that mission is kind of that hands-on experience in the arts, but it really is to give kids self-confidence, and adults too, to have people be able to communicate their ideas better. You know, we worked long and hard to come up with what we said was our brand, and that is we don't just entertain, we change lives. And I really feel that's a key to the theater's success over the years.
I think that's so interesting. What we want to get into today is that it's not just about the production that happens, you know, every few months there's a new production. There's so much more going on behind the scenes. And I know we want to talk about the educational programs that you do, but let me ask you this. How would you summarize what the mission is? What do you feel like Market House needs to be and means to be?
I think when it first started out, the group was thinking that, okay, we're going to put on entertainment. But as it evolved over time, the act of creating something is something that helps you grow personally. And when I go out and I talk to groups, I do a lot of faith in my talks to group, because I think that act of creation is still going on today, that we are created in God's image as creative beings, and that is to continue that process of creating the world around us.
Right.
And I think when we work with kids especially, but adults too, that creative process of working together as a group to put on a show, to create something that tells a story. And I have a good friend of mine, Nick Yeager, that I meet with regularly, and I laugh because I say, we're both in the same business. We're in the business of storytelling, and of telling stories that have meaning, and that give an opportunity for people to step into somebody else's shoes and see what that's like. And that mission of the theater is to tell stories that are important to the community, to pick plays that, while we may do a comedy, it still has something important to say about the human condition. And really, that process that the actors go through in a rehearsal process, for me, that creative act is what that mission is. And people's lives are changed from that. They walk out, I mean, the community comes together to view what that is. And I use the term miracle. They come to see this miracle that happens with this group of people who were just, average community people, but they have this talent inside of them. And the theater kind of draws that out and shares it with the community.
Right.
Yeah.
And you get to witness the miracle of what we do. But the act of creating that show, really is what the mission of the theater is.
I've noticed in just my short period of time being involved that there is we use the phrase community theater, and we think of the community that's located in the theater, but it does develop in each production that I've been a part of. There's a community that grows out of that. And I know that Market House has a tremendous support system and community, and maybe that's not the case for all community theaters, but do you think that is what has led to that, or what would you attribute to that community?
There's a couple things that we know that make us successful. One of them is that we are constantly opening ourselves to new people coming in. Community theater is generally thought of as very amateur, very sandbox, and very cliquey. It's a closed group of people. But April and I have really strived in the last 30 years to make that an open process that welcomes in brand new people and allows the organization to grow.
Sure.
And that openness and that willingness to accept new people in, to take them in, and there is, in that process of developing a show, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to put yourself out there. And sometimes it's an emotional scene where you're going to cry, you're going to laugh, you're going to do something. And as we get older, we tend to guard our emotions a little bit, to kind of not let ourselves be vulnerable. But you can't be that on stage.
Right.
You have to be vulnerable. And when you go through that process with a group of people, you learn to trust these people, to be emotionally vulnerable, to do things. And if you have good directors that help you through that process, it kind of helps yourself grow.
Find yourself.
You find yourself in that too. And so that community is a group of people who all go through that process together. They understand we're tight-knit, and sometimes even the spouses or the family of that outside of that doesn't understand the inside jokes or the things that go on to build that community. But when you see a show, you recognize it in the people on stage that they have formed that. And community, to me, is such a vital word about how we come together to celebrate the things in life, to mourn the sad things in life, to be a group of people that are not individuals, but that we take pride in what we come together for, and we share in that. And community is such a vital part of that.
It's interesting that you make that connection, because of course in a lot of church discussions it's all about, particularly these days, about how to build that community and the idea of creating together and being together and being vulnerable together. That, in a way, I think you make a good point about being in the same business.
Well, we talk all the time at PCM about you start with the fundamental sense of building relationships.
Right.
That's where everything begins, and that's what I'm hearing you say is you bring this scattered group of people together at the beginning of a new production, and they begin building the relationships with one another, and as they work through that, then they're able to build relationships with the audience. And when that's done successfully, you have a miracle, right?
Well, you do, and it truly is that, doing Godspell. You have the theme of Godspell is really about someone who comes in, and this group of people kind of band together, and they come together to follow that leader, that person. And then with, using theater as a metaphor, the director steps back, and then it's up to the cast to do that, to go out there and do that. And the director stands back away from that and he has to hand it off at a certain point, and they have to take it. And as they do it, each time they do that show, an actor, if they're really working at it, discovers brand new things that the director never even thought of. You know, so it's constantly changing and evolving, and that community grows. And when they add the audience to it, theater has such an immediacy to it. When I teach classes out here, I sometimes teach intro to theater classes. You can go to a movie, and that movie doesn't make any difference if there's one person in the audience or 100 people in the audience. It still plays the same way. But a theater production, somebody laughs, the actor pauses for a second. The actor has to change the performance based on what the audience is. And some audiences are really loud and really responsive, and some are very quiet. And so you have to adjust and you have to change that. And theater is live because you never know what's going to happen. Strange things happen, and that's that kind of walking that tightrope that the audience and the actor come together and create that moment. And that's
so
a wonderful moment.
Probably this different every time then,
It is.
right?
Each show's different.
And a little bit of, for the information, just Godspell being a story of the parables of Jesus and a recreation of that from the 70s. So,
And that was an emotional production, that really was. I was fortunate to see it. And it was lighthearted in the beginning, but you went there with every actor as they went through the emotions of the crucifixion, and you were right there with them, and you could see that probably every time you did a performance, you were there 100% living it, right?
That's the goal.
The actors, I mean, we put on the walls Act of Faith, and we worked with the director Bonnie Daniels, because acting, you know, faith is about acting. It's not just, I have a great, I have 3 words on my desk that came from a book on how to do PowerPoint presentations. And one of it was understand, believe, and then act. You have to get people to understand what it is. And then once they understand it, then they have to believe that they can do something. They can change that. And then
buy
they
into
act.
it.
They buy into it, and then they act on that belief. And faith, to me, is acting on that belief. Acting is the expression of faith, not just believing something and going, oh yeah, I believe in that, but actually putting your hands to work, feeding the community, doing the things that are required of that belief, or acting on it.
Interesting.
So that leads into a good question. What is your particular faith background or your story?
I've kind of gone a full circle. I grew up in a non-denominational Christian background, and then when I hit my teens, I walked away from it, wanted nothing to do with it. But something kept calling me, kept gnawing at me. And so I started reading every book I could get my hands on, and every different faith, and every different, you know, Buddhism, on Hinduism, on Islam. And what I kind of came back through that is that the faith has some very universal things about it. And a person's faith has to evolve over time. That childhood faith, at some point, you have to kind of leave that behind and move into an adult faith. And in Paducah here, after several years after we moved here, my wife and I joined Grace Episcopal Church. And then they came with a program called Education for Ministry. So I completed the 4-year and got my certificate from Sewanee Theological Seminary, Education for Ministry. And through that process and through some of the other things, to me, it is interesting that faith is different for every person. And that process of discovering what your faith is a journey that a lot of people have been on, but not everybody has the same pathway to get there. And for me, faith is a big part of what I do in talking to audiences about the 50th anniversary. The theater was founded on a leap of faith. Every show you do is an act of faith that you're going to announce a play, people are going to show up to audition for it, audiences are going to buy tickets for it, sponsors are going to sponsor it, and it's that setting it out there. We announce a season 6 months before the first show. We are selling tickets, and I have no idea who the cast is. I have no idea, you know, what it's going to look like, what it's going to do, and people put faith in you that this is going to succeed.
It will happen.
And actors, on a regular basis, my job is to go, you can do this. You can do this, because there's doubt that goes in with, man, I'm going to be a
Sure.
fool. I can't do this. I can't.
What was I thinking?
What was I thinking? You know, and sometimes it is saying, no, trust me,
It'll be okay.
you can do this, and have faith that you can step out there and do this. And as the executive director of the theater, it's my job to kind of lead people and to have that vision of where we're going. But people go, do you know exactly what Les Mis was going to look like? No, but I know where I'm going. Right. My friend Nick Yeager has the thing about a plumb bob, a line that you look at, and that line is always straight up and down, and you go towards that line and you go, okay, if we do these things, we use these fundamentals, it's going to get there. It'll be okay. I don't have to be in total control of this, and in fact, I learned long ago through my faith, I'm not in control of this thing.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just doing the best I can and trying to guide people and working with their faith so that we get there together and we create something together.
I love that philosophy.
And I know you've asked about how do we pick plays.
Right.
We're in play
Right.
selection right now. And some plays are incredibly powerful plays, but they have real challenging moments in it. Anything that's good is going to challenge you.
Right.
You would hope that it would.
You know,
Yeah.
and somebody's going to be offended by everything. They will find something
Probably
offensive
true,
in
too.
everything. And I learned long ago, people will walk out, and I don't care what it is, Sound of Music, somebody's going to get offended and walk out.
Oh dear.
So what you try to do is you try to pick good stories. And you try to pick a broad range of things that will appeal to not only the actors who want to act good characters, but you also appeal to actors who want to increase, to find themselves, to
Stretch a little.
their potential with that, and audiences too. And you have to bring an audience along. If you just keep doing the same thing year after year, your audience never grows.
Right.
And there's some wonderful stories out there that I've wanted to do for years, and I'll say, our audience isn't ready for that.
Not quite there yet.
But there are some that my board of directors or that the group will go, oh, I don't know, this is real risky to do. And I'll say, but look at the story, look at what it tells us. A couple plays that we're looking at this year, really challenging subject matter. One of the best plays right now, won the Tony Award and the Pulitzer Prize, I think, is about a person who is Muslim, married to a white woman who they have friends over who's Jewish, and his wife's African American. And it's how tribal we all are underneath, and we don't even know it.
We don't know.
The things that make us do what we do from that early stages, that and it's a play about 9/11 and about how this man, everyone looks at him who's Muslim because he's Middle Eastern and has certain things going through their minds, and how he reacts to that is based on his ancestry, not even what he's aware of. But boy, there's some challenging things in that make us all stop and think, who am I, and what is it that I believe in, and how do I feel about this? Godspell's an example of that, trying to come up with some challenging moments in Godspell, of not just the parables as we've always heard them, but we put up some images in the background of one scene with people with protest signs saying, God hates you. And it was two people arguing about gay marriage. And the story was, no matter which side you're on in this, love the person who is persecuting you. And I think for me over time, people have disagreed with me. People can get very angry. But I always know that there's a point that we want the same thing. We want to be connected to each other. We want humanity. We want that sense of purpose in life, and trying to find that in a character. That what's the thing that they're after? Trying to find that in a show. This show may challenge me to think in ways that are really difficult for me, but what is it? Where does it end up? How do we come together at the end of this thing? And we don't do just silly comedies that, TV sitcoms are like that. At the end of it, you're no better off than you were at the start of it. A good play will take you someplace. Right. And that's how we pick plays.
Must be a fascinating process. It must
Well,
be
and I
a
read
little bit grueling, a little bit stressful.
I try to avoid what's going to be the knee-jerk reaction, because some people, as soon as they hear a word, and the toughest word that we have on stage is God.
Really?
Okay.
Anything to do with God, will tend to provoke the biggest reaction out of people.
Because we have a pretty diverse
Oh, yes.
community in this area.
And there are strong feelings one way or another. So if you use God in any form in a play, you know that it's going to be challenging. And the pendulum swings. What the theater did, the second play was The 7-Year Itch, which had people smoking and drinking, and it was about an affair. It was about, what was going on. We've gone through time periods where the play selection group go, oh, we can't do that. I'm kind of like, we did this 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, we can't do it now. Okay. And I see that pendulum is changing and is swinging to open us up, and things change. Younger people come in and they don't have these preconceptions about what this means.
Right.
One of the plays that we're looking at in the box, I'm not saying we're going to do it, is Rent. It has some really difficult characters in it for this community. But it's the story of how a group of people come together to support each other.
Yeah.
In telling a story, you ask yourself the question, what would I do if I were in this
Right.
person's shoes? And that opens up our minds a little bit. And that's growth. That's what we're after, right? We're after growth. And you spoke about love, everybody coming back to that. Sometimes we have to be reminded that that's what we believe. We believe that love is the answer. We believe that building relationships is fundamental, but we wander off sometimes into our own interests or ideologies or whatever, and we forget that. Sometimes a really good story helps bring us all back to the
Kill a
table
Mockingbird's
again.
great. Atticus has such wonderful things that he says. I mean, people spit in his face. There are people in the community who say awful things to him, and he's trying to teach his daughter, these people still deserve our respect. They are still members of this community, and they are still people that we deal with every day, and we still need to respect them. Regardless of how they treat us, we need to respect them. And he's got the line in the book and in the play about standing in somebody else's shoes and how that helps us. Kids and adults who are involved in theater are less likely to make negative racial comments. They are more empathetic to other people and other stories.
Because they learn to put themselves
Because they
in those
learn
places.
by stepping into another person's shoes, oh, this person isn't black and white. There's all these different things going on here, and what does this person really want? Now, they may go about it in an awful way, but they really want to be loved.
Yeah.
They want respect. They want all these things. So how do we teach that to kids? How do we teach kids to be emotionally responsive to other people? When I teach the class, I talk about interactive. Theater is interactive. And more of our experiences now, we want to be in the middle of what it is. We want to be a part of what that is. Theme parks are great for that. They're going to put us in the middle of a situation. Some of the video games that are out there, you're a character in the game.
Yeah.
And that sense, of how you can separate yourself from it becomes less and less in that aesthetic distance that's necessary to critique something. In film and in plays, we have some aesthetic distance. We're an audience. We're set away from it. When we're in a video game, there is no aesthetic distance. We're in the middle of it. So when you have angry feelings and stuff, how do you channel that? In a game, you're right there. You can't critique, oh man, I'm getting angry about this. You just get angry. So theater is a great teaching tool that's kind of that middle ground to do that. How do we respond to situations? How do we do that?
Yeah.
Wonderful. We are almost out of time. I can't believe it. But a dream that you have for the future of Market House. What?
We are working on partnering with other groups to do some more educational things, to create some more classroom opportunities. All the groups in the community all have a need for arts education space, and to fill in some gaps in that. So we're working on an expansion for that and expanding our youth programming, educational programming, and I just keep trying to do good plays. Pick good stories.
I think you're doing very
open
well
it
with
up.
that. And
That's
Paducah is
that's the
blessed
vision.
by both you and April.
Absolutely.
People who want to get involved that have never, ever had a theater experience, what kind of volunteer opportunities are there?
There are classes on Saturdays for kids of all ages. You can help out with the sets, the lights. You can act in the shows, come audition. We got auditions for Fox on the Fairway, a comedy in October, and Best Christmas Pageant Ever.
Yeah.
The youth show will audition in October. The website has all that information. And everything in the theater is open to anybody who wants to get involved.
That's wonderful.
Wow.
That's wonderful.
So much about stories today and about faith. And I was thinking as we were talking how theater really does have that ability to kind of blend our stories, to take our stories and to help us to mesh those with the stories that are going on stage and blend with each other's stories. And I just, how that works in with faith is just really cool. So I really enjoyed the discussion this morning. And if anybody wants to get involved in Market House and build the stories, I know from a fact that Michael is very willing to be a part of that. So thanks for all your time.
Thank you.
It's been a great morning.
Yeah, Michael, I just wish we had more time because it was so interesting and
Really?
we had lots more questions. So
That's all
I
right.
hope that you will come back.
Absolutely. All right.
So,
Well, this has been Reflections, and we've had a great time talking. Have a good morning.
thanks.